Hello and welcome to another captivating episode of Conversations with Indie Authors. Today we have a remarkable guest who has dedicated her life to helping others navigate the challenges of caregiving and healthcare. With over 40 years of experience as a medical social worker, she's not only a seasoned professional, but also an award-winning author. Join us as we dive into her latest book, Role Reversal: How to Take Care of Yourself and Your Aging Parents, and explore her invaluable insights into caregiving, estate planning, and maintaining dignity during medical crisis.
Conversations with Indie Authors.
Could you share with our audience your background as a medical social worker and what led you in a career of caregiving and writing about healthcare topics?
Sure. I've been a medical social worker for over 45 years. And what came from that is I used my experience as a medical social worker. I worked with patients that had very severe injuries, catastrophic illnesses like strokes and amputations and head injuries and burns. And I worked with them and their families, and I also covered the emergency room. And what started my writing career was I was walking on my unit one day, and a family of a patient of mine was in the hallway crying. And I looked in the room, and the resident was just doing an ordinary EKG test, nothing really crucial. And I asked them why they were crying. They thought he was dying because the resident hadn't taken the 10 seconds it would have taken to explain to them it was an ordinary test. And what happened at that moment was I realized that if people had information and knew what questions to ask in a hospital setting, that I could help them make the experience less terrifying. And so that's sort of how my writing career evolved after that. All of my writing is around healthcare. My belief is that if you can educate people, you can empower them, and you can also make them feel less alone. And so I've written 3 books, and they're all nonfiction, and they're all a combination of my personal experience and my professional expertise. So the first book I wrote as a result of that experience was a book called Patient Power: How to Have a Say During Your Hospital Stay. And I thought to myself, what questions do people ask? What information do they need? And all of us, when we're in a crisis, no matter what it is, we feel vulnerable, we feel alone. And just having that information, knowing that other people are going through it, I think really makes you feel less alone. My second book that came after, and that was in 1986 that I wrote that book. And that was the first time I'd ever written anything. And shockingly, I got it published to the first publisher I sent it to. I couldn't even believe it. So I mistakenly assumed that in the future, when I wrote more, that it would be easy to get published. And much to my surprise, that wasn't the case. My second book was about infertility. It was called Riding the Infertility Roller Coaster: A Guide to Educate and Inspire. And again, I struggled with infertility, so I took my personal experience. But that was a series of interviews with people in very different situations. It was people that chose not to have a child. It was people that used donors. It was people that adopted locally, and it was people that adopted foreign adoptions. And what I did was put together all the information that I could to help anyone that was struggling with infertility find a way to get through it. And in all my books, I also talk about the emotional aspects and how to cope, and I give them clinical information based on my professional experience as a medical social worker. And I have to tell you, when I wrote writing, I got a letter from a woman in Sri Lanka, and she told me she got my book and she cried because she had felt so alone and there was no one there she could talk to. And that was really eye-opening for me, just to know that a book can touch someone in that way, even in a place that was so far away. The universality of the experiences was really compelling to me. My most recent book is called Role Reversal: How to Take Care of Yourself and Your Aging Parents. And that originally was going to be a book about my father's life story. He was not an extraordinary person from the sense of society, but he was an extraordinary person as a human being. And so I began to write that. And it was written in my words and his words, which I thought, whenever I'm writing a book, I always look out there to see what's there, because there's no point in writing something that's already out there. And so what I do is I spend 3-4 months researching, and I try to find gaps, places where if I was to write a book, I could fill in those gaps for people. But then what I did was with role reversal was I combined his story with my role as a caregiver for him. He was 97 when he died. And then I also put together information. Part of the book is for people that are caregivers to answer any questions that they might have and give them a lot of information about resources and how to cope.
Your book, Role Reversal, it talks about caregiving. Can you give us a couple of key insights to help someone in that situation right now?
Yeah, I would say caregiving is challenging in the best of circumstances. And the thing about it that's challenging is sometimes you think you're going in it to take care of someone for one reason, and particularly when you're taking care of your parents, there can be a cascade of medical problems that happens that changes the situation. And so the majority of caregivers are women, 65 to 70%. And women are really bad at taking care of themselves, but really good at taking care of everybody else. So what happens is, because of that, burnout is a huge issue for caregivers. And so what I would say, first of all, as one of the primary issues is, if you are going to be a caregiver, you need to learn how to take care of the other person, but also to take care of yourself, to pay attention, your body, your heart, your mind. And as you notice changes, you don't want to get to the point that you're burnt out. So it's important, if you are assuming a caregiver role, to also make sure that you have a plan in place where there's help for you as well as for the person that needs the care.
So you write nonfiction books in healthcare topics that requires a lot of research. Can you give us a glimpse into your writing process?
Yeah, what I like to do is I go out there and see what books are on topics that I think are of universal interest. And I like to do evergreen topics. And what I mean by that is topics that don't go away. Healthcare is not going away. The crisis around hospitalizations and what all that means, and especially in the United States, isn't going away. Same for infertility. And the great thing, since I wrote my book, is infertility. People are more comfortable talking about it publicly now and openly. I really appreciate celebrities doing that, because it gives other people permission to do that. Just this week, Kerry Washington was interviewed a couple of days ago, and she talked about finding out for the first time in her life that she was conceived by a sperm donor, that the biological father she thought she had was not. So it's something that comes up all the time. And so I like to take that, and then the issue of caregiving and the role reversal, and I call it role reversal because that's when adult children begin to take care of their aging parents. And that's certainly something that's not going away. And the boomer generation is living longer. And so there are more issues around caregiving, and particularly with the pandemic too. That was another thing that happened with caregiving. The numbers of caregivers went way up. Normally the numbers around caregiving here in the US are around 45 million are caregivers. But when the pandemic happened and we were all shut in and the support services couldn't come in, the numbers went up by 10 million. So there were 55 to 60 million caregivers that happened. And the other interesting thing was that the younger folks stepped up, and it was more multi-generational.
No, that is interesting.
Yeah, because everybody was at home.
What do you think are some misconceptions and are things that get overlooked in the world of caregiving?
Misconceptions are that it's totally a negative experience. I think we only hear about the bad stuff, but really wonderful things can come from caregiving. You can resolve relationships that might have been problematical. I find it, I've taken care of my parents, and I've also helped 2 of my friends to die with dignity. They didn't have family, their families of choice took care of them. And it can be such a a privilege to have that intimacy with someone and to be there for them. And it can be a life-changing experience for everybody. And so I would say that's something that people don't always realize or recognize. I would also say that there are more options for help than people realize as well. And so it's just tapping in, finding someone locally that can be there to help you kind of sort things out and figure out what the best course of action is.
Where would be the place that, if someone's a new caregiver, like you mentioned, the boomers are retiring and now everyone's needing to take care of them. So what if someone finds themselves in a new caregiver role? What would be the first thing they need to look for or do?
I would say the very first thing to do is people become caregivers for a whole variety of reasons. It can be everything from dementia or Alzheimer's disease to cancer, to Parkinson's, to a million different kinds of issues. So the first thing to do is, if you're going to be taking care of someone, is to educate yourself about what the illness is, whether it's a mental illness or a medical problem. Get as much information as you can so you know what to expect and what the course is going to be. And that involves talking to the doctor and also doing some research on your own. I would say the other thing is, the wonderful thing about now versus 20, 30 years ago is you and I are on the internet, and the internet is a wonderful place to go for caregivers. There's support. There's so many chat rooms where you can go if you're a caregiver and you're taking care of someone with Alzheimer's, for example. Any time of day or night, you can pop into a chat room and talk with other people that are going through the same thing that you are and learn about their experience, to learn from them about tips and resources. So you don't even have to leave your home really to get that kind of help. It's really amazing. And also there's all kinds of organizations that you can find out about by going online and seeing what's out there. And so there's a lot more opportunities to get information if you're able to take a look. Also, for people that are taking care of their parents, where it's an aging situation, there's a lot online place called aginglifecare.org, and you can go there and you just punch in the zip code of the person who needs the care. And there are local experts around the country. They're called geriatric care managers, and they're experts in knowing what kind of help is needed. They're there to give the patient support and their family members, and they also can come and help you hook up with the proper level of services in your area. And they can also be a bridge. Sometimes aging parents don't want to listen to their adult children. That's the last thing they want to do. And we all have been there, right? And so sometimes these geriatric care managers can be a really nice bridge to kind of help talk about what needs to be discussed.
Nice. Well, where can we find you online?
Well, I have a number of places. My author page, where I have a lot of information, interviews, and things that I've done, is capital IWAICHLER.WPEngine.com. And there's lots of information there about all these topics. And in addition, Monday through Friday, I'm still very compelled to write articles. I've written probably 1,000 articles by now on every imaginable mental health and medical problem. And so I try Monday through Friday to publish articles about infertility and about caregiving and aging. So I have a Facebook page for the caregiving piece, and that's at www.facebook.com/role reversal, ROLEREVERSAL1. And then I also have a Facebook page around infertility, and that's Iris Waichler, IRISWAICHLER /.infertility roller coaster. And I also post these articles on Twitter. And so that's another place to find me. And my Twitter page is twitter.com/Iris Waichler. So the information is at all those places. And in addition, I was just going to say one more thing. I write for a company called choosingtherapy.com. And there's a lot of articles about a much wider range of medical and mental health issues that I write about there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you have anything new coming out?
I'm doing a lot of articles right now. I may be working on a book right now, but I don't want to say too much about it. But what I would want to say is that it's a book to help people who are first responders who have had a series of traumas, how to help them cope and have their families cope. So that's a possible book that's going to be in the future. Well, I'm waiting to see. I have someone I'm working with, and we're kind of putting the pieces together to see whether we have something we can work with or not.
That is wonderful. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you. This is a super important topic for a lot of more people than there used to be.
I really appreciate you having me on the show. Thank you so much. Thanks for what you do for indie authors too. It's great.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you want, all of the links will be in the description box below if you want to get a hold of Iris Waichler.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening episode of the Zarlaquan podcast. Remember to subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss a beat.